We are live.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kim. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order here. Good morning, everyone. The hybrid meeting of the Cultural Resources Commission will now come to order. Quorum has been established with 5 members in attendance. Is that correct, Steph?
We actually have 6 members in attendance.
Okay, thank you very much. 6 members in attendance. Today is Wednesday, July 12th. It is 10:03 a.m. Pursuant to Act 220, Session Laws of Hawaii 2021, which amended the Sunshine Law to allow meetings to be remotely conducted online, effective January 1st, 2022, the Cultural Resources Commission will host a hybrid meeting of online and in-person participants. An in-person location has been identified on the agenda for the public to provide testimony on agenda items and to view the meeting. This meeting can also be viewed live online. A link to the YouTube live stream is provided on the county website. The video recording will remain on the YouTube channel for those who are not able to watch it live. Reports and surveys reviewed during this hearing are available on the county website. Commissioners, please be reminded that only one person may speak at a time. Raise your hand to be recognized if you have a question or a comment. Introductions here. Commissioners, please introduce yourselves and report if others are present in your location. My name is Aaron Spielman. Nobody's here right now. My wife might be here later. You might see my dogs walking through in the background. Natalie's not with us today. I'll go on to Matthew Clark.
Aloha, Chair. Matthew Clark. I am alone in my office.
Thank you, Matt. Commissioner Kilohana Hirano.
Aloha, Chair. Kilohana Hirano. I am alone in my office as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Ku'ule Kekealani.
Aloha mai kako. No one is here with me this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. I did see Kealoha. Okay. Commissioner Kealoha Kinney, welcome.
Aloha. Commissioner Kealoha Kinney. Good morning. No one's here in my office today.
Thank you for joining us today. Did I see Scott Mahoney or is he not? Scott Mahoney's not here today. Commissioner Nicole Louie. Try to unmute, Auntie.
Commissioner Louie here, and I'm with my mom and 2 fur babies.
Hi. And then, sorry, staff, is Desmond here with us today? Not yet.
Correct, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so Desmond Haumea, Commissioner Desmond Haumea may be joining us here as the meeting progresses. Today in the Hilo office, we have CRC staff support joining us. Kevin Sullivan, planner, Alex Gherkin, planner, Kim Tanaka, board secretary, Jean Campbell, deputy corporation counsel, and Kim, I also had another name for Courtney Vincent.
Yes, Courtney is running our Zoom.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statutes 92-3, interested persons who want to provide oral testimony may do so either at the beginning of the meeting when the board takes public statements on the agenda or immediately before the specific agenda item is called. Staff, please indicate if there are any members of the public wishing to provide testimony online or in person. Let the record show affirmative.
Correct. We do have people present online and in person to provide public testimony on these agenda items.
Okay, very good. Public testimony in accordance with Cultural Resources Commission Rule 1-7D3. We have a 3-minute per person per agenda item. And we just ask that we try to respect that and everyone's time involved to do the best we can with what we're given. For administrative matters, we will take approval of minutes from the administrative matters portion of the agenda out of order. That's my personal choice today. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the Cultural Resources Commission meeting held on June 21st, 2023?
Commissioner Hirano makes a motion to approve the minutes from June 21st.
Excellent, thank you. Can I ask for a second, please?
Commissioner Clark seconds the motion.
Thank you very much. It was moved by Commissioner Hirano and seconded by Commissioner Clark. Is there any discussion at this time? Okay, we'll call for a vote and we'll say all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Let the record show there was no opposition. Minutes approved as circulated. Thank you very much. Okay, getting into the business of the commission, agenda item number 1. Kona 3 LLC, PL-REZ 2022-000033, application to amend change of zone ordinance number 02131 REZ 470 to allow for a 10-year time extension to condition I and condition N. Location Holualoa Hui Lands, Holualoa 1, 2, and 3, North Kona, Hawaii. TMKs 37-6-021:016 and 017. Are there any members of the public who wish to provide testimony on this agenda item? And I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Spielman. We do have folks present. If you're okay with doing the in-person testimony first, we can start here in the conference room.
Very good.
We have David Blanchett-Maddock here, testify for Kona 3. If you wouldn't mind, sir, this is specifically set up for you to sit in front of and testify. Make sure everything gets on the record.
Aloha, David Blanchett-Maddock, a Kona resident. We testified here before. We've been at this for 6 years, and quite frankly, we were wondering whether to come in today because we know that you're at the point where you're making your decisions. We don't want to confuse matters or make things any worse. I would request 2 things. One, if my written testimony made it into the record or not, and secondly, Tom Pahoko Stone, I was on the phone with him last night. He should be online to be one of the testifiers. Is that correct? He is a direct lineal descendant. He's also an expert. He has well respected in the community for projects like that are adjacent to this one. He's a trained and educated historian. And I would ask that you extend him. The courtesy is required under the law for a lineal descendant rather than just a 5-minute or 3-minute testifier. He has testimony that's important to this matter. And in the event that somehow counsel tells you not to do that, I would ask you to ask him a question, basically to allow him to give a narrative format on this because he has a lot to offer. He was sick at the first hearings and he's recovered, and we're very fortunate to have him here. So I would ask the indulgence of this commission to allow him at length opportunity to testify and give evidence here today. Also, I just want to remind the commission what's on our mind. There's due process, substantive due process, and procedural due process. And we've had our 3 minutes against the 37 years of the developer, and we've managed to get onto the record experts like Jackson and like Rick from the federal and the state bureaus who've testified unequivocally to these trails being there. And now the substantive due process is before this committee. If the trails exist, they need to be protected. And they're not the only thing on this property, as the commission's recognized. I think you're going to hear testimony about water and other things today, too. In any event, I want to remind the commission, because it is confusing being in these, that it's not what I've heard the developers say to people. I've heard this, that beyond a reasonable doubt, it's not at all. It's what's more likely or not. And the trail alignments are undeniable. These trails existed prior. If they existed prior, they have to be protected. And that means that they have to be protected in a meaningful way. We need easements along these trails that are wide enough for people to go without with the ability to see to the sky and in order to preserve and enjoy their cultural history. I'm looking forward to the testimony of Mr. Stone, and I hope that you guys will grant him what he's entitled to, which is an at-length opportunity to testify at this time. Anything else, Diana? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next testifier we have on the list present is Diane Blanchett-Maddock.
Aloha, I'm Diane
Aloha.
Blanchett-Maddock. David and I, you see us every time that there's a hearing. We're here again to encourage everyone to support a resolution that this INA should be preserved and that there are substantial cultural resources on this land that should be preserved. Thank you for your time, and I hope you're able to listen to Tom's speech because he is the expert, in our opinion, on this area. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person we have listed is Darren Arai. Thanks, Darren.
Hi, good morning, Chair Spearman and members of the commission. My name is Darren Arai. I'm assisting the applicant Kona 3 LLC with their amendment request before the Legal Planning Commission. We understand that the commission is currently in deliberations regarding our motion that's currently on the floor. I think our prior testimonies speaks for itself. We did submit recent testimony in response to written testimony offered by Mr. Powell, and we believe that information has been shared with you. So we ask that you carefully consider our response to Mr. Powell's testimony. As far as your ongoing deliberations, we simply ask, I think all of us have gone through a journey, right? and on the applicant's behalf, it's been more a 7-year journey in providing information, evidence, documentation, and testimonies that addresses the various public policy concerns, cultural concerns, historical concerns, and whether or not this is the right thing to do in this particular area. The evidence that the applicant has provided on the record hopefully will be carefully considered as the commissioners continue with their deliberations today. So with that, we do have joining me today online representatives of Kona 3 LLC, Roland Higashi, Richard Wheelock, Mr. Robert Williams. Also in attendance is Mr. Glenn S. Scott, the archaeologist, and Mr. Keone Kalave. And I believe Mr. Michael Matsukawa may also be joining us online. So with that, we appreciate your thoughtful considerations and deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren. Chairman, that's everybody present in the conference room for public testimony.
You have online?
We have, right. We have online several testifiers registered. First of which is Tom Pohaku Stone.
Hey,
so we can hear from.
Hi, aloha. Just to jump in here as chair and in respect to the testimony we heard previously, Mr. Stone, how long do you think that you would want to speak for so that I can honor your time here?
well, I mean, that's all dependent on how much you guys want to consume or not. I mean, because basically, I guess we could lay out my connection to this whole thing, to the Big Island. I'm Thomas Scaly Ahunui Okalana Anaoli Okohia Stone III. I go by Pohaku because my dad was Pohaku. That's what they called him. My grandfather was called Pohaku. So it's just carrying on that name. We're actually Mahi Helelima. We adopted the Stone name in 1862 from Alo Malie, my great Tutu Wahine, who are the first boy born to her, adopted Samuel Stone's name, and he was given Samuel Stone. So we're actually Mahi Helelima, But that was the time during transition of 1860 when a lot of the ali'i nui were converting to Christianity and taking English surnames. So I'm also Keli'i Pio. We come out of Ka'u. So we're related also because both families, the Mahis and the Kahanus, for example, both come from Ka'u. The Kahanu family is descendants from Kamuali'i of Kauai. And on our side, Mahi Helilima was the last ali'i nui of Kohala, and which would be Hana. So prior to being routed by Kahikili, who's also our family. So that's just laying that out. As far as my background goes, I am formerly with the University of Hawaii. I was the Hawaiian Pacific Islands coordinator studies for those studies at Kapiolani Community College, which was my last station after I left UH Manoa. My background is my MA is in not American Studies, Pacific Island Studies. I also did substantial work archaeologically with Patrick Kirch, Terry Hunt, Boyd Dixon, Patricia McInerney out of Boston U, Roger Green. My presentation in 1998 was in Nashville, Tennessee at the archaeological conference they had there. So, and it was on Holua. My concern and the studies that have been done and what I've read through everything you've had, all the testimony presented and stuff like that, it's pretty unique that nobody even stops to look at what the studies were done originally for the Kona district and the Kona field systems. Because everybody's addressing trails, Holua slides. And by the way, Tione Kalave was a former student of mine through a program created by Uncle Eddie and Auntie Pua that I was selected to conduct that educational component for us culturally, because no one knew anything about Holua except for my family. So with that said, I don't know, how long do I have?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Stone. That's very helpful. I appreciate and honor your legacy and what you're talking about here. I think what I want to clarify is, are you testifying as a lineal descendant, in which case I would allow you more time here and
Yes.
ask you to talk about maybe the project in particular, and I fully respect and understand your background at this time. Thank you.
Yes, I am testifying as a lineal descendant. So with that said, and if there's any questions, please just jump in and ask. That particular area is divided, I believe, Puapua'a has 3 ilis of it, right? And they're all part of Lanihau, right? So it's what's left there is what's important. It's not what to just continuously remove. We've already done most of the damage already, but what can we maintain and continue to hold as part of the cultural history and knowledge of that area? So I was reading through one of my sources, which is the Journal of Toketa. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. Toketa was one of the Tahitian missionaries that came to Hawaii, and he spent time on the Big Island, I think from 1822 to about 1824, 25. And he wrote and he recorded a lot of what was going on and areas. And that time he spent with Kuakini. And it was in that journal that you could find a lot of information regarding this particular, what we would call moku, right? So of Kona. And a lot isn't there today, but it doesn't mean it wasn't there, and it doesn't mean those things are still not important today. Because as we grow as a community, as a population in the islands, we have to remember we can't just continuously erase, the original culture, the original people. And by continuously doing that, we face the fact is that more knowledge is going to be lost, which is one of the points that Toketa was making, is that so much had been lost already because of our great dyings of disease following the arrival of Europeans. And he was making an attempt through his Christianity to record as much as he could in the time he had. And he recorded a lot regarding that area. And one of them is the importance of what we call the Kona field system in archaeology. That Kona field system is, everybody looks at it, it's a grid of walls, rock walls. And so, when we look at those grid of rock walls, a lot of it in the contemporary time are used for cattle, they're used for various things. But the original intent of those walls was to move water from the upland to the lower lands. The planting of taro, which he records also in 1822, is taro growing on A'a. How we planted in A'a and how water was significant. But, we overlooked this whole system that was created, and we look at it as just walls. Everyone knows, every scientist knows that water is held in rock. And the type of rock we have in Hawaii and the walls we constructed, that's why we planted in those walls, along those walls, and within the grids of those walls, because it contained moisture that would move along through it. And I did, as part of my archaeological research, whenever you do something like this, you have to prove the fact. So I had to build the model. I constructed the model, and with a drip system, we moved the water from one place down through this wall system, and it spread out. That's what's really important. The trail systems were there to maintain these wall systems. And there were individuals that were mandated to live in these areas because that was their kuleana. That was their responsibility to care for each part of these systems. And the burials that exist there, which there are, because I recently had I had a friend that recently departed us, a few years back, and he maintained the burial on his property, which we cared for constantly. His whole property, 43 acres, is what I believe he acquired, and they minimized development on that properties to continually care for what was there. The artifacts found on his property was just above this particular proposed development area was significant. We found ulumaika, we found ko'i, which is ads. We just found a whole lot of stuff. Down the ways where towards this particular area is small caves that people, if you're just walking on the surface, you're not really looking, you're going to miss. Because everyone looks at burials or habitats as these large caves, especially burials. Those burials are hidden I've been caretaking a lot of burials throughout Hawaii for over 30 years, 40 years. I've been mandated by the kupuna to do certain things that, you know, I don't have to say here. But one of them is caretaking of our iwi. And not everyone is meant to do that. And the iwi are not easily found. You usually have to go through very small openings to get to them. But once you're inside, there's a larger system within. So the point of the matter is that you have to look at the greater whole of what's already. How can you maintain, especially that Kona rock wall field system and trails? How can you, you know, develop in a manner that preserves? We've gone through all of this development with a lack of significant preservation. We've always just looked at it as developing. It doesn't matter anymore, but it does matter because now Hawaii's growth is dependent on the culture. And if the culture can't show its physical component, its tourism growth, it's worthless, you know? So we got to change our mindset. And though I'm against this particular development proposal, I'm against a lot of development proposals. It's the first one I've been asked to come and testify in. I pretty much avoid most of this because to me, it's just falling on deaf ears. And people are going to do what people are going to do. People are going to make every effort to make their kala, their money. But I think a lot more study has to be done. And so they're requesting another 10-year extension, which is ridiculous. You know, they either have to complete it or not. And I've read through most of what has been submitted, and I don't see anyone really addressing that cultural connection that's significant. I don't see anything in that where an AIS or EIS has really been significantly mandated, so it's done correctly. I've seen all these archaeologists' names and stuff like that, but really, what are they, you know, what's the purpose? The purpose is either you're going to save this thing. It is, you know, it doesn't mean you can't have development, but the first priority is to save it. And then reconsider how to do continuous development of Kailo Kona or Lani Hao, however you want to call it. You know, because everybody looks at it is that, for example, you know, within the, you know, the moku of Kailo Kona, there is just so many ahupua'a, and they all overlap each other. And there's an issue because when we look at this connections and overlaps, we've adjusted those lines ourselves over contemporary time, over modern times. So we need to go back to the older things. Yes, so the Geological Society, you know, service, you know, put mapping together, photographs and stuff like that. But there's an oral history, and this history is written down by missionaries. Missionaries took a lot of time to write a lot of things down that were significant to them, especially land. They didn't really record a lot of our cultural practices because they were busy trying to kill it. And let's be honest about that. That's exactly what they were doing, trying to kill it. So it brings me to the whole idea of whether or not I'm adding in another component besides the trail system, whether or not there was a holua slide there or there wasn't. Toketa records that him and Kuakini went to a holua slide and participated or watched participants in it in this particular area. The slide is long gone. There's another slide that was down in what we call Kahulu'u and Keoho area. So we still have one great slide there, and that's the Kaneka slide, which is on the Kamehameha School's land up above Keoho Bay, that goes from the uplands to Hawaiʻi originally. So we have townhomes and condos there now at the lower section. The clubhouse was originally there, but Kamehameha closed that. And there's a great discussion. But the point of the matter is that for every great slide, there was a smaller one. And they were all connected. And there was also a heiaus constructed to that. The originality or the original purpose of the great slides was not the ritualistic practice of sledding. It was the practice of moving the great trees from the uplands to the ocean. That was its main purpose. Over time, we actually established a ritualistic practice of the holua to honor Nawahine or Hawaiʻi. That's what the holua is for. And to say that in Holualoa, which is next to this property and next to the Puapua'a, which is what Puapua'a is made up of 3 ili. So within that all lies within Lanihau. And so when we look at that, the great slides were built at the borderlines. The smaller slides were built in 1 ili, but they were all connected. And that was because we were using that to signify how we brought the canoes down in the lower sections. And the big ones, we actually brought those huge logs, the core logs down. When we look at Hualalai today, we always see this. We don't see the old forest, the Vaukele of the old time, which was the large core trees. And if we get up above Holualoa, there are still core trees up there. And that particular area was really important for that. And so we had to create trail systems, we had to maintain wall systems, and we had to maintain the slides. Just because the slide is not there no more, going through Holualoa, perhaps into Puapua'a, and that particular development proposal doesn't mean it wasn't there. I mean, I did the studies over years for that. I'm recognized for that archaeologically, just same as the work I did for DHHL with Professor Dixon and Professor Kirch on Kahiki Nui. We went through that to establish the fact is how we're going to develop the lands of Kahiki Nui. And my part was establishing the architectural structures that existed there culturally, which is one was a great Holua slide. So when we look at Holua, and I'm just moving on into something else, we always look at Holuas as the way that you just rode this sled down the mountain on this prepared course of rock. But that's not really the truth. Molokai or Molokai has a very unique Holua slide. It goes off in 3 different directions. And they don't always require you constantly sliding. And then you go up to what we call the phallic zones overlooking Kalaupapa. That was once a cleared area. And that those phallic stones, that's where the Holua slide existed. And that Holua slide required you to slide down the hill, that mountain, run across a course, rolling an ulumaika while you carried your Papa Holua on to the next stage of it. This is how intense all of this is. So Kona is the most unique place because it's the only place that had and I'm not saying just Kona, but the Big Island in its entirety, that was completely constructed out of pohakus. We understood how significant the pohaku was to us, not only for worshiping Pele, honoring our wahine or our, or the gods of our kane, but water. Water was so important in the dryland areas. And that's how we moved water, is by those walls, and those trails just continuously educate us. And that's my whole goal with our nonprofit, is to educate our younger generation to start looking at this deeper and digging deeper, because a lot of our oral history, as Takeda has said, is almost missing. That's in 1822. And today, whatever we find is important. And I have to really humbly say that I'm not an expert. I'm a native, but I have a background because I live in a world where that's required. And I chose to return to school based on a testimony given about my ignorance as a native during a Hawaiian Homelands meeting from an individual from our Hawaiian Homeland Department, who brought in an expert on my culture, who gave testimony about who we are, how we are, and how we live. But he was a gentleman that after that DHHL meeting years ago, that he pulled me aside and said to me, hey, the only reason is because I did the studies, I have my palapala or his degree in this area. And I understood him. So I went back to school, and I'm thankful that the archaeology departments worldwide have recognized my work that continues to reestablish how important our architectural works of our kupuna, maintain who we are. It's not just language and hula. We have to have we have to have everything to have a continuous culture. And if you keep developing it, then we keep going off into, losing more and more of who we are. So, and I'll bring it to a close. I mean, I'm not in favor of that development. I mean, I think there has to be a lot more studies done about it. And I think the council has to reconsider, extending that to a lot of developments and really taking a look at Kailua Kona and the development processes there. And, reevaluate, how the system's really going to work. Because to me, that's very, very significant. And I guess the last stamp I can put on this, and I hope you guys really consider this, that you should forego giving them the 10-year extension or whatever. But is that a lot of my works appear in the Smithsonian Museum, Sydney Museum of Australia, Belgium, across the world, in the Captain Cook Birthplace Museum, all this stuff. So it isn't like I don't come in with some kind of knowledge of it, and how I'm busy trying to keep my culture alive for my children, my grandchildren, and my great grandchildren. And I think you guys should reach out to other archaeologists or individuals that are understanding of that. And I would like to actually send you guys something that you should look him up. A good friend of mine who's doing LiDAR studies throughout the world for National Geographic, and we're really, really good friends. He would love to come and do projects like this to help us, maintain who we are. Anyway, I know I could ramble on forever, but I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak. And I really hope you take the time to, really consider the development process that's going on the Big Island. Okay, that's all I got. Mahalo. Any questions? I'll sit here for a bit.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. I really appreciate your testimony today. Thank you very much. I think we have maybe one or two more testifiers, and if you're willing to stay on, I would like the ability for commissioners to ask you questions, since this is the first time we've heard, I believe, from a lineal descendant, with the exception of Commissioner Keakealani, perhaps at a prior meeting. If that'd be okay with you, would you be willing to stay? Okay, thank you very much. Staff, if we could please continue with public testimony.
Yes, Chairman. The next person listed is Lamaku Mikala Roy.
Aloha, Lamaku.
Aloha mai. That was a fine testimony of Mr. Pohaku Stone. Thank you. Today, with this introduction, I will take my time, which may be well over 3 minutes today. You see, as a Hawaiian person, first of all, as people, we are sensitive. And every time I sit before this group, I am sensitive to where your feelings are, what your orientation is. And then it's confirmed when we get into the meeting. Therefore, you will not listen to what I say. I am here to offer you the opportunity to question, ask me about my testimony that I expect that you have in your hands. Can you express that that is true, Mr. Chair? You have my testimony?
Yes, Lamaku, I have your testimony from, was it today?
The 10th, it's dated, everyone. Do you all acknowledge this? This is an opportunity for all of you to ask me questions while I'm with you. In addition, it is a very fine opportunity to get into some things that I would have loved to have spoken about at earlier meetings, but perhaps, and because of the strength of the testimony of Mr. Stone, I am most grateful, and I will seize this opportunity to say that I am the descendant, the daughter of the man and the team that restored Ahu'ena Heiau, which is the capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii. The archaeology of this location is part of the archaeology of Kona, like Mr. Stone says. The Mahina'i is the name for the field system. We do not know it as field system. The West does. Hawaiians know it for our terms, but are we given the chance to use our terms? We are not. I am a graduate of the University of Hawaii at Hilo after starting at Manoa in pre-med. My background upholds the work of my father. I am his chosen designate, and I now uphold the kingdom's heritage by saying to you all that we hear not only from our Oiwi ancestors, we hold from the original, the highest lineages of the Pacific, of Kalua'okalani, which is the original name for Hawaii. None of you have taken the time to speak about these things. All of you have gone with the pace of this commission, which is no pace of Hawaii. It is the pace of the people that come here. They do not own this land. God does. And we, as the first people of this land, are the God's designate. We are the people that uphold. The Oiwi are the last people on earth that uphold God's truth. Akua owns all the lands. We uphold the saying that has gone into the Christian Bible. The land is owned by God, not by man. We are the last people who say this. And the evidence is we will not allow any further desecration of Mauna Kea. That's the proof of it. And that is the movement that is being lived now. I sit before you, I give you the opportunity Use your minds, your hearts. Tupa o Hawaiʻi. Ask me any now mai. If not, holies, you may ask me. And I do not mean disrespect of you, but I just mean the word holy, which is stranger to this land. You do not speak for it. Pohaku Stone speaks for it. He has courage. So do I.
3 minutes.
Mahalo no Lamaku.
I have one more thing to say, which is this. The people who gave the testimony, Kalave, for the holua out in Kapua. I have to tell you that the greatest of the Oiwi who represents at Kamakohonu is Ali'i Naluahineka Upua. Ali'i Naluahineka Upua said to me to tell you, those of you who support the work, the men who are supporting the work of Kalave, good, come to meet with the ancestors. They have things to teach you. You're doing well. Come. Another thing is, it was Ali'i Naluahineka Upua who taught us that the great living out there, the reason that slide is there is evidence of the great armies that once resided there in their training. The great fishing grounds supported the great armies that trained for war over generations of time. When you want to know about the history, you ask Akua. You will not miss. I'm speaking to our own Oiwi. This is who you come from. The West, they have forgotten. It is all by one God. And there is Jesus the Christ, yes, but it is all of the same line of lineage of source. Jesus Christ is a figure of history. All of our people and all of our great lineages, images of history here. And it is great history to tell. Nowhere else in the world will you hear it, and neither will you ever read again that which you have before you. Why? It is kapu. From now on, kapu loa. Ho!
Mahalo no Lamaku. I will extend the same question I asked of Mr. Stone, which is, would you be willing to stay after we complete the public testimony? So if commissioners have questions, we can ask you directly.
Yes.
Thank you. Staff, are there any more public testifiers today?
Yes, Chairman, Deborah Ward.
Not on.
Oh, she's not on. Oh, okay. Then the answer is no. No further testimony.
And there was no testimony for other agenda item today. Is that correct?
We can call it.
We can call it that agenda item, I think.
Okay. Public testimony being complete, but I would like the opportunity here to extend it to commissioners. The opportunity to ask Mr. Stone or Lamaku any questions about their testimony. And I'll just open it up if I can see a hand. I think I see, oh no, that was my cursor, sorry. I think I see all the commissioners here. So if anybody's, please now's the time. Commissioner Louis, please go ahead.
I don't have so much as a question for Tom Apuhaku. My tutu was Thomas Mahihelelima Stone. Who is he to you? You're muted, cousin. You're muted. Oh.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely my Ohana, yes.
Oh yeah, my tutu lady was Violet Simerson.
That was my
Violet Solomon.
Yes, that was my by Tutu Waine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Auntie Mercy, Auntie Martha,
Oh my God.
Auntie Hina.
Auntie
Oh, okay.
Mercy and all of them. The last time I saw them was when Dad passed away.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I had a chance to interview Auntie Mercy. And she talked about Auntie Grandma Elmira Maluihi Kiaolani. So yeah,
Yes.
she worked at the palace, and
Yes.
Auntie Mercy said she was in charge of teaching the younger royal women how to walk and how to sit in a chair properly.
Oh, I
She
have
was
to
a-
send you the photograph of all of them sitting
Oh,
at
thank you.
the Maunawili Summer Palace.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
they're all there, when they were all at the palace with yeah, Queen Liliuokalani at the time, right?
Oh, yes, yes, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, I'll have to
Yeah.
send you the photograph.
Okay, yeah. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
It's good. We connect, even if
Yeah.
it's this way.
yes, and a wonderful testimony. Thank you so much.
Holy Perikia.
I'm tearing up here, guys. Sorry, I'm glad you made that connection. It's very very heartwarming. Thank you. Please, I'd like to continue. Oh, I see Commissioner Kealoha. Please go ahead. You're on mute.
Hi, aloha. I had a question for Mr. Stone. I guess first of all, I just want to thank you for your testimony. I think it brought a lot more context to the region, to the area, to the use of that place. And I guess my question for you as a lineal descendant and a holder of this really important knowledge about this place, have you ever been contacted by the developer over the course of this these studies and archaeological surveys and so forth? Has anybody like reached out to you over this time? Because I don't think I saw you in any of the reports that I received, but perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe you were in there.
No, I mean, yes, I was reached out. I mean, the community reached out to me. The Blanchards reached out to me. So, and I was, friends of mine asked me if I would be part of, just reading through it and seeing what I thought. And I don't normally discuss my lineage with the community, with the public at all. That's a personal
Did the
thing.
developer?
Pardon?
Did the developer affect you?
No.
Though?
No, I never heard anything from the developer. So
Or any of their consultants or at all?
nope,
No.
not a thing. So if you're asking me, no, I have no connection to the developer whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah, and also, thank you for your testimony on the purpose of Holua. And I guess I was wondering about the movement of large trees down the slopes using the Holua, and I guess I was wondering if you could share any have there been any remains of like these trees that have been found inside of the Holua area or Holua sled, maybe remnants of core trees and so forth. I was just curious about that.
Well, the trees, no, there's no remnants of the trees themselves. I mean, you're talking over thousands of years, so that's deteriorated. But there are areas, like Calico, for example. I mean, you have to look at down below what was on the coastline, because Toketo talks about the canoe carving sheds. That's how he writes it, or at least that's how it's translated into English, and how that area had 10 of Kamehameha's va'as there, and how they were working on it and things like that. The concept was looking throughout the Pacific regarding our migration on all the high islands. There's similarities to that taking place. I mean, because we have this conceptual artistic concept of you know, all the Hawaiians carrying these massive logs out of the forest to the ocean, created by, you know, art, right? So, but that's not the reality. The reality is we created a pathway, which we had to do to move those logs. We know the forest line, the Valkele, extended, you know, down to a certain level until, you know, we started, you know, cutting so much of it and developing it and things like that. But to move it was to create the sled, which is another part of my thesis work I had to do. I had to prove my points, and my points was to move, you know, a lot, you know, create the sled, which we did. We put 1 ton on this sled, 2,000 pounds, and I can move it by myself, dragged it from one point to another point. So, I mean, because that's part of education, right? Academic. So
it's incredible.
As far as whether, you know, trees existed, what's left along there, I mean, whatever's found in the caves, like, what is that? At Ho'okena, right? Kanemuna's cave, burial cave, and what came out of her burial cave. There was a Hulua slide there also. And that was at Ho'okena. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, absolutely. Thank you so much. Mahalo.
Olekilikia.
Aloha, Chair. I have my hand up. I might not be able to see it. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, yeah, I do see it. Sorry. Commissioner Kilohana, please go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned something about balancing development with preservation of, you know, some of our sites. Do you think that within anything that you've seen for this particular project, there is the opportunity for balancing this development with the larger maintenance and preservation of historical sites here?
Well, for me to answer that question, by the way, aloha, is that there's always always a way. It's just that, you know, you have to infuse, you know, that cultural mindset. Let's just say that, you know, looks at the entirety of it and its connection across to the whole moku, and not just an isolated place. So that was my point in getting across to the commission, is how do you develop and connect everything? You know, because so much has been developed already, but a lot still exists in between all those spaces. So how do you take one, you know, small separated development process and connect it? But to make the point, yes, I mean, you could always do that. I mean, I've always, you know, I've worked with other areas that's the intention. And how do you not wipe it out? How do you keep the cultural foundation intact? And that's always been my goal in, you know, the places that I've had the opportunity to sit down with the communities and developers, right? Is how do we save that spiritual and physical knowledge?
Mahalo.
Olekilikia.
Commissioner, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Commissioner Desmond Haumea. Hello, sir.
Hey, aloha, my kako, aloha, pohako.
Hey, cool.
You know, not much question. Just I wanted to just kako And I appreciate the sharing of our cultural foundations. That's really important to this commission for the Kuana Ike. Yeah? But on your Hulua slide, as a Taraiva, yeah, one of my kupuna wanted to make sure that before we start building canoes, which we started years ago,
Yes.
Yokaha, that we had to go find out, do research, yeah, and make sure that we know, the papakumaka valu, this paradigm shift in education, yeah, allows us to view things from a different view. So when we developed that, even with the foundation, Kanakole Foundation, it was important that we found these ike, this knowledge. And I appreciate the cultural view because we need to embrace our kupuna pathways, embraced by our ancestral realm. It's important to understand that our ancestors came from 1,000 miles away, landed on these shores, and they flourished. And right now, listening to, I appreciate the testimony, but it goes on not only here, but in community associations, as well as all the way up to our leadership of state of Hawaii, stretching all over to the United States. Just a reminder, when we say mainland, this is our mainland. I'll be traveling to The Hague in a week. But my comment is that, the va'a, if you look at the Holua slide, and Pohako knows this, it has a direct pathway to the kai. And that's what it was used for. They used it in the Cook Islands. I just came back from the Cook Islands. But the Hawaiians, and I'll say the Hawaiians in the Kapoi Kawakaiko, our ancestors, they were very creative, yeah. They were, I teach Hawaiian studies, and I always impress on my students that we were scientists, engineers, doctors, all these wonderful things that before even the Western world came up with those words. So with that being said, we figured out development. We figured out sustainability, our energy, having voyaged for over 50 years and just launched our latest voyage, visiting with so many countries, yeah. It's these indigenous cultures that thrived. Like here, listening to the pro and the cons, it's so evident that the Western mind, yeah, the Western-minded manifest destination, they're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, and that's never going to happen. But we have cultural views like this that sets the foundations for what we do. Every morning I'm up, my vairua is open, and I talk to my tutus every day. The haumea is a kiawehaku. I want to make sure that I do, and everybody say this word pono. I think pono is abused. We as parents, we were hanao pono. It's this Western world, this Western influence that forced our parents to change our values rather than malamana keiki, yeah? Rather than see the skill, even in schools. When there is a boy that acts up and listen, is bored, immediately the Western world would tag that boy with ADH, special education, rather than researching its skills. And so if we're going to talk about disparities, it goes way beyond this commission. And we need more voices. And a lot of people, they're afraid to voice. I belong to the Royal Order of Kamehameha. Even there, we are afraid to voice, to step out of our comfort zone. And really, and for me, it's malamana keiki. My whole mauna is our keiki, our ancestors in training, our kupuna in training. And that's where that begins. Because stick a fork in us, we're done. Look at the work what all of our kupuna has done. You go to any place in this Hawaii. I mean, I just went down to Waiahuli the other day when that boat came in. I cannot even our keiki cannot even enjoy Waiahuli. My cousin Aina came on the news today. It's like it's out of control. I had a big confrontation with one of the archaeologists. He tells me, well, I went to archaeology school. I just graduated 10 years ago. Well, I said, that's not enough. He asked me why. He says, was Hawaiian studies part of your PhD? Yeah. Of course not. He told me, I went to the mine, I couldn't find anything. Like Pohakawi said, it's over 1,000 years. The aina is not gonna, it changes. Lamako speaks of akua. He malamas the land. He put a kuleana us to steward the land, to steward the aina, and to protect the iwi. So you have told him, you're not gonna find any iwi digging down 5 feet. You will have, I'm so happy to hear this cultural views, and we need more of that. But I'm guided by our children now, and I teach that passionately, to the lens of our kupuna on our voyaging canoes. But I just wanted to kako everybody here actually, because everybody has a view, but you got to make sure that you makavalo that view, that you look at it from a different lens. And if it's not about development, it's about where are children? What are we doing for our children? That should be the main focus and the foundation of what we do. We cannot develop someplace where it doesn't really address the needs of our children. For me, if they want to develop it, build me one school. Help me get back, help our AHEC, our Association of Hawaiian Evangelical Churches, to get our land back. United Church of Christ was complicit in the overthrow. Our kupuna gave them 60 deeds to save the land. And what they did, they started selling the land. So it's important that we here address the needs of our keiki. Because like I said, that's our ancestors in training, that's our kupuna in training. And if we don't focus on them, then we're going to lose sight of what our kuleana is today. Just open up your vairua, talk to the tuto, they're going to tell you straight. Our keiki, it's called, I call a 25-year future, for Keoki and Malia. What have we done lately for them? I haven't done enough. I've been teaching for over 20 years, Hawaiian studies, and I don't feel I've done enough, because once these children go home, that Western society, it damages, it creates confusion for our children. I see that in schools, and I'm passionate about that. I'm passionate about my culture, but it's we live in a unique place. We're 2,000 miles from any continent, and based on what we have, and I'm glad I'm on this commission, because I'll say the Big Island is a prime candidate for sustainability and a global view. I think we should focus on decentralizing government, because I don't want to be paying taxes for them for use for the rail. It should stay home on our Big Island to develop places like Ahuena, like all the Holua slides, our schools, our education, especially our medical industry. We just opened up our first private medical health based on Western and traditional indigenous health and wellness. And it's important to understand that we have to heal from this. Yeah. Just battling the Western mind, Western ways is difficult, but I think if we focus on what our kuleana is, and for me, it's our children. Okay. Mahalo. Mahalo ki akua, maru ki atua, ki orometua. Maru.
Mahalo no, Commissioner. Thank you very much. I did see another hand up, I think. Did Commissioner Kealoha have another question?
No, I think it was answered.
Okay. Thank you very much. I do see Lamaku's hand up. Thank you, Lamaku. Please go ahead.
Mr. Kini had an interesting question of Mr. Pohaku. His question was, is there a way that this can be somehow brought together in an understanding where the foreign mindset, the newcomer, is brought into understanding of the full first culture. This is my call. Akua has asked me to teach what they teach me. Halau no eo kahele mauna is the beginning of the school. The House of Wisdom of the Mountain Roaming Chief in Kona will be the instruction of the ancestors for the people. This is what I am poised to present and I am building with you all, because this would be the ideal. Kona no kako e kamailio maka olelo makohine. Ina maupopo no mako a ole maupopo maupopo ole na mea ya e ni. Ina ma kamailio mako maka olelo makohine a ole maupopo mako papo e aole maanei ai. The words for education, for our people is no eo imi ka iko oiaio. Oiaio is truth. We and Mr. Uncle Desmond, I agree with your words. And I say to you that rather than seeking to stand for the children, you stand for Akua. Because I tell you all that I am taught in testimony as I gave to you folks, lucky persons you are. In that testimony, it explains how we are first here. We did not arrive here. We were here. We are the first people of the earth, Oiwi. We are people of the bones, and we are Hiapo, the firstborn of Akua, because we helped Akua create the tracks for what became all faiths of the earth. This is oral heritage, and I'm sharing this with you because it is very pertinent. All of the ahupua that you speak of, Tom, are here because they are nowhere else throughout all of the islands. Nowhere else will you find the number of ahupua that you see here. Why? Because this is Pu'o Kalua Kalani. This is the land that the chiefs were absolutely promised to God to keep for the future. This is them keeping it for the future. Coming by way of spirit only to those who sought how to take care of the capital. Akua has named the next ruler of our islands because the United States is not doing its best. And they're not paying heed to the people who know about the earth. That is us. Oiwi. So again, I say to you, bring it to your mind again to really, truly read my testimony. And always remember that you are all about the future, children, absolutely. But we are first committed to Akua. Any questions again? Here's your one opportunity. After this, it is no longer to be spoken of because this is kapu law. This is why Mauna Wakea will not be disturbed. And these are the very lands, my Oiwi, where sacredness lives. This is why Akua will not allow this development. Thank you.
Oh, no. I'd like to open it back up for questions. If any other commissioners have any questions of Lamaku or Mr. Stone. Oh, I see Commissioner Ku'ule. Aloha. Yeah, there you go.
Ai, aloha pumehana ia kako. A he wahi aloha ke ia oi, a he mahalo noho ia oi e ana kala mikahala I ko hapai ana, I ko mana o pili I ka wala au ana, ke kuka kamailio I ka olelo Hawaiʻi, ka olelo makua hine noho I. A he koi I loko o ke la manao, no ka mea no ke kuana I ke Hawaiʻi, no na hua olelo Hawaiʻi, a ale like me ka manao ma ka au pelakania. Hiki, paha, ke nana I ke kahi mea ano kokoke, a kana I ka olelo o iwi o ke ia aina nei, he hohonu loa ka manao o ka olelo Hawaiʻi. No leila e no ku uwahi leo mahalo ia oi no kela. E ana e no ka manawa, no ka maupopo lea o na kanaka apau e walau ana ma ka pelakania. I maupopo lea na kanaka apau. Me kela, I just wanted to express my mahalo for the olelo, for the leo oiwi that has offered testimony. And it's not to disregard or lessen anyone else's, but when you have Kanaka natives, native tenants, oiwi, testify, that is to be of great consideration. So mahalo anui ya oe e pohaku, a mahalo ya oe e anakala, anake mikahala. In just a couple of thoughts, I think first and foremost, mahalo ya oe e keaka I ko, to make these connections for you and anakala pohaku. Anake mikahala had lifted the voice of Tutunaluahine, and pretty much my entire life, I have heard of Tutunaluahine because my father, my auntie, his sister, and then 5 Keakealani Wahine sisters were taken every summer to go down and live with Tutunaluahine and his wife, Tutuluki. And Dad remembers having to sweep. He says the entire house of Tutunaluahine was ili stone, and they had to sweep with the puniu broom and tidy up and make nice every morning. Malamahale. So Tutunaluahine, again, a genealogical tutu of mine and someone that we look to and lean on greatly within our ohana. And the people, or the ohana from Pu'uanahulu that was taken down every summer to live with Tutunaluahine and Grandma Luki. So we elevate and we honor and we mahalo them for their ike that they continue to bestow upon us. Maybe my last thought is something, Uncle Pohaku, that you had said, which is it touched me, but it also made me contemplate when I first considered or was asked perhaps to sit on this committee, the CRC, the Cultural Resource Commission, in that to reevaluate the system and the systems that are in place today, and where and how do we fit within these systems. And so I respectively sit in this seat, knowing the amplification of kuleana that is bestowed, and that we each hali and we carry and we awamo. And it is indeed not a small task, not small kuleana, that we do our best to uphold. But the system, a reevaluation of the system, or to see sometimes how systems fail, or how systems can perhaps be, shifted, and so that's probably one of my biggest hopes or desires, is being a part of and within this kind of system, is to look at systemic change. How, when, and we might not have all of the answers, but we're here, and to lend our voice into this kind of change, this huli'ia that is necessary, is why I believe many of us, and I wouldn't speak for everybody, but certainly I do believe that everyone who sits on this commission have realization to the extent of our responsibilities, and it is nui, nui, hohonu. Anyway, I just wanted to offer those sentiments and those thoughts. Me ku'uwahi leo mahalo, a me ke aloha piha I ka ana aku I kia ano mana o mahalo piha.
Mahalo no, Commissioner Ku'ule. Lamaku, if I might ask a question of you, please. In the last round, you mentioned something about kapu law and not speaking about this anymore. Maybe I'm not sure. I think I'm curious to know if the CRC commissioners can, learn more about what you're talking about in a different venue. Is that possible?
What is the question that you're referring to, Mr. Spielman? What's your question? About what am I talking about?
Oh, sorry. How can the CRC learn more about the importance of the area described in your testimony from the Ahu'ena Heao I think it was 40 miles, but basically the big picture of what you're talking about, I would like to know how the CRC can learn more outside of the commission venue. Is there a forum or a place that you speak, or I'm curious to know more and I'm not sure. Well, I'm unclear about the Kapuloa maybe. So that's why I'm asking for your guidance on this.
Akua hears your words. Akua hears everything that's going on. Always does, doesn't miss a thing. When we miss a thing or deliberately miss a thing, Akua doesn't. And this is what I mean about sensitivities. We are all sensitive, but some of us choose to not feel it or call other things more important, like money over culture or life or God. Your question is poised to God because I've given you my answer. Once I've given my testimony, that was how you folks are the only ones to receive that. It will not be spoken of again. This, I would, the question, the feeling that I have that I'm guided to go by in my na'o is to say this. I feel to ask Akua. I feel to ask about your question. And that is what I feel. And for that answer that I give, I would ask for moments here. I will mute myself and ask. Mr. Spielman, or that will be well. I will take a moment and bring an answer.
Thank you. Thank you. While Mr. Stone is still able to join us on the phone, are there any other commissioners that would like to ask a question at this time? Well, Mr. Stone, I'd just like to take a moment here to thank you very much for coming to testify as a lineal descendant. I think that's important to this commission, very much so. And also your knowledge on the Hulua Sled and the how it relates to other practices that we may not understand outside of this meeting before this time. So your expertise is greatly appreciated. And personally, I'm very much interested in learning more. Thank you.
Okay, Ahuyo e malama. Pakoa. I'm out.
Oh, Chair Steelman, I got, as a commission, are we able to make what do you call that? We can definitely use members of the community to go and learn from them, right? Can we?
That's what I was getting at, is that maybe if they're correct.
So that's what I think you were asking Lamaku, if there's a chance that we could come and learn from her as well. I think we'd have to set that up with the staff. Yeah.
And Mr. Stone too, I think he's gone, but I remember reading a whole article about his works decades ago. So I mean, I guess I haven't met him since then, but to know his work and body of work, it's always interesting to learn from our kupuna. Sorry, folks, I have a phone ringing here. I'm just going to mute for a second.
Oh.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. If- Lamaku, I see your hand.
I am back and I have an answer. Akua says, it is all there. You ought to come to me. You are not, and I will say to you, Nicole, with all due respect, your answer reflects an answer that we're all affected by colonization. Akua teaches me that this is a malady. It is actually something you have to heal from, colonization. You and I, intellectually, I can understand your consideration. Go to the Hawaiian people, but that is not the testimony that you have received. You don't even know how to recognize the testimony by your question there. The answer by Akua, Mr. Spielman, is the only way that this can be accomplished is if you begin the communications with the ancestors. And that comes by way of Halau No'eo Kahele Mauna. This is poised to be one day taught to all of the schools. In fact, it all goes up to the very care of all spiritual sacred sites. They all come down by Akua now, because Akua has talked to us by way of Ahu Enaheyao, the burning altar. There is only one way to Akua in this case, in this discussion, and it is through Halau No'eo Kahele Mauna by way of Lamaku, myself. If not, this is the end of that discussion, and you have an incredible history that you have seen. The world, it is a world history. And this is what, when you talk about people like being of lineal descent, you can't quantify the number of lineal descents, Mr. Spielman. They're all over the world, Oivi. My heart laughs. Excuse me, I mean no disrespect, but I laugh at the holy consideration of how you have to quantify a lineal descendant. You've got more lineal descendants than you can even number, but you quantify them to fit on a page. How could you do that? And by the way, we did not arrive here. We come from here with God. When he created life, it was here in Kalua Okalani, the second heaven. This is why the home of the hawk is here, nowhere else. Iolani. This is the home of Akua, and this is the rebirth of Earth planet. It goes into the hands of only those who can care for it, and that is the kingdom of Hawaii. Ali Inui Mo'i Edmund Kilipaki Silva Jr. is named as the Kahu of Ahu Enehiau and the leader of the kingdom of Hawaii. These are the lands of the royal heritage of this and all of our people. There is no question about it. There is no place to go. You are lucky to be able to ask this question, that you can come to God, but it is by myself and Halau No'eo, by what you've heard today. Humbly I say, if I may, humbly and with no cause of any kind of animosity to any of you. Yeah, please. This is me, and this is what I say.
Mahalo no, Lamaku. Sorry, I need a minute. I'm sorry, I'll be right back. I just need a minute. Can I call for a break?
Yeah, just call for a recess, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Hello, everybody. Aloha. If I can get everybody, the commissioners, to turn back on your cameras, please. Some reason Kevin's is off, but I see you on the screen.
My close-up is less than my distance shot, so I didn't want to.
I think one of
I did.
Commissioner Desmond Homea had to leave. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bearing with me on that. To return to business here, the matter at our last meeting for the Kona 3 was last deferred during discussion of two motions that passed unanimously. Yes?
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Let me. No. Before we close public testimony, I had a request from Darren Arai, testifier on behalf of the applicant, if he could clarify his testimony briefly before we close public testimony and move on to what you were just about to move us into, which is where we left this item last. If you'll allow.
Yeah, please, Mr. Arai. I think his original testimony was very short. I'd be happy to.
I can you walk over there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the courtesy. I just wanted to make one clarification and make a statement. I think you mentioned you recognize two lineal descendants who provided testimony. Commissioner Kekeavane, I think two people who were lineal descendants that provided testimony. I just wanted to make sure, one of them I recall was Jerome Kanuha, who provided written testimony to the commission. So I just wanted to make sure that his testimony is on the record, and if the commission has had the opportunity to read that particular testimony, because he did identify himself as a lineal descendant of these lands. Finally, it's more of a perspective kind of statement. The applicant has been, this whole process has taken in excess of 7 years. The applicant has tried to respond to all of the concerns and comments to the best of their ability, as demonstrated by the record that, as I mentioned numerous times before, exceeds a couple of thousands of pages of information and documentation. I just want to make sure that everyone recognizes that what the applicant is attempting to do is to get an amendment to their zoning ordinance to give them the opportunity to go forward with a possible design that hopefully could fit well into the community and address some of the cultural and historical concerns that have been raised. And with that, I want to make sure that they are not cast as being irresponsible or unresponsive to the concerns. I think the record and their effort clearly shows they have simply tried their best, to provide you with the information where hopefully you can arrive at an informed decision. In the end, they're simply trying to do what they feel is best for the community, which is providing much needed housing in the area that's more affordable than of what you can find throughout many other parts of Kona. So I hope that effort and the sincerity by the applicant is simply recognized. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kevin, do you have any testifiers?
No, that's all that I have listed. So could close public testimony, I believe.
Okay, very good. I would like to close public testimony at this time and continue with the agenda item. The matter was last deferred at our meeting in June during discussion of two motions that passed unanimously, inclusive of staff preparation of the recommendations. The motion makers, both Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Kurashima, have had a chance to clarify their motions with staff since the last meeting, and staff can now present the motion's recommendations in a form acceptable to the CRC for transmittal to the Planning Commission. And that's not the end of it. That's just this part.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a communication transmitted that, or drafted, that includes the recommendations, the motions and recommendations from the last discussion. And let me pull that up and make sure I get it shared correctly. Well, I'll just go through this real quick for everybody. It's a standard letter. Repeats the the hearing dates, all that good stuff, and moves into what the CRC, per their rules of practice and procedure, can forward to the Planning Commission. That is a recommendation, along with an opinion, if you so deem to include it, and that is represented by the highlighted. As you probably recall, your rules allow you the opportunity to make an opinion as to whether or not the project will have no impact, substantial impact, or limited but acceptable impact on historic assets. And below that are the motions that have been clarified since the last meeting. We can make it, we can forward this. The point would be to forward this communication to the Planning Commission as requested. However, we can clarify any of this language at this time during discussion if you wish as well. And I'll ask Jean, you guys can give me direction now regarding your opinion of the impact on historic assets, just so that that's clear in the letter. It seems from everything that's been presented that it's either one of two of the three options, and I have those highlighted here for you.
And thank you, Kevin. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we do not need a motion on the opinion, or we do need a motion on the opinion?
I believe it would be safest to give a motion on the opinion, but I'll defer to Corp Counsel as well. I'm sure it could go either way. Frankly, but
hi all, this is Jean Campbell, the Deputy Corporation Counsel for the Commission. Chair, I do think that since it, essentially the Commission is needing to make a decision about which opinion to give, I think that you should do that through a motion.
Very good. Thank you for clarifying that, Jean. I appreciate it. Okay, so my understanding is both of these motions have been voted on unanimously. What's the process now, Kevin, that we're going to be, is it that we're just bringing this back up to review at the CRC level, or are we discussing this further?
I believe from the last meeting, it was deferred to clarify language.
That's right.
Which we sort of did interim and could take another opportunity to do so now. I guess if we do change the motion language that's in this letter, that would be a second motion, the first of which would be what, the opinion. You guys voting on this.
Let's try and keep from the motion standpoint. What's there now, Commissioner Clark, is what's on the screen now reflect the words that formed your motion that we voted on at the last meeting?
Yes, it does, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Kevin, can you please confirm that Commissioner Kurashima is also replied affirmatively to the language listed in the motion number 1?
That's correct.
Okay, so I think maybe this is a procedural thing. I mean, in my world, I signed this letter, but I think in the CRC world, we have to open it up maybe if there's any comments at this time from CRC members on either of these motions. Commissioner Nicole Louie, please go ahead. Sorry, Auntie Tutu.
Tutu.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So with, I just have a question. I don't know if it's for Jean or for, so would this be, what we're asking for is a supplemental, to the inventory survey or a supplemental to the cultural impact assessment? Is that why we're making these motions? To make them do a supplemental archaeological inventory survey and a supplemental cultural impact to add to that for the amendment of change of ordinance, zone ordinance?
I can comment on that from the last meeting. I do remember Chair Kurashima mentioning the intent that be, included in either the CIA or the AIS.
Okay.
But it was not included in the clarified motion language.
These are recommendations to the Leeward Planning Commission, I would add to that.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Does that come close to answering the question?
I guess I'm just like, I just wondered if this was if we were to recommend that they do a supplemental amendment to the reports, the 2018 and the 2020 reports. That's all. Maybe it answers that. I'm kind of confused. Sorry.
Is it a method of delivery? In other words, is it about where that information would show up? Should it be?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say because I added my and is what I shared at the last Cultural Resource Commission. Is that going to be included or updated in the CIA report? So I guess
Okay, that last bit that you said, I think we might want to bring up as a motion or recommendation in addition to what's on the screen now, if needed or as appropriate.
Oh, okay.
My hesitation is to change the language that was previously voted on, but that's just a meeting tactic. We could, of course, change the language.
Okay, thank you.
So if the proper, let's just take one, for example, motion number one, if the proper delivery of that information is through an EIS or a CIA, then that's how it would come. But if it's an amendment or a different document, then that's how it would come. I guess maybe it's what is it tied to? And,
Okay.
And then Kevin, does that make sense what I just said, that we can add, if Commissioner Louie would like to make a motion, that we could add that at this time to this letter? Is that possible?
Yes, and I think I see Jean nodding yes.
Okay, thumbs up.
And I would mention to the CRC, the way these motions, the way these recommendations are presented in this letter, there is a bit of flow here. From what I understand is that first and foremost, lineal descendants in Kama'aina need to be consulted, documented. That knowledge needs to be gathered in relation to natural and cultural resources. And then from that, and it's sort of connected here in two places. These motions are connected, in my mind, at least, here and here. And therefore, this knowledge will then be applied to to modify the development plan specifically regarding open spaces, natural features, and so forth and so on, if that makes sense. If there needed to be specificity about where this documentation of lineal descent and Kama'aina knowledge needs to go, as a CIA or an AIS, you know, that's fine, but I think it could stand without that specificity.
Okay. Thank you, Ken, for confirming. So I think I would open it up to any commissioners that have any questions about the language in front of us now in either 1 or 2. And if the language is acceptable, or if we want to talk about it further, now's the time. Commissioner Kealoha, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I have a couple of comments. I mean, this motion was created before we had Kampuaku Stone's testimony, before we, at least for myself, learned more about the context of this particular area. And I think even before that testimony, I had already had some concerns given the amount of community testimony and that's been given over the years, but also during these last few meetings. And so I guess one thing I guess I would throw out there, and I know folks have already done a lot of work on this already, but I guess I would potentially, well, I guess I'll just say I would like to object to this particular motion. And whether people agree with me or disagree with me, that's fine. But I believe that it's particularly concerning to me, and I hope I'm wrong about this, and maybe other commissioners did better reading than I did, but I didn't see Dr. Stone's work or testimony really coming to the forefront of this, of the documents that were presented to me, at least. And I feel like there's a higher standard, higher level that developers need to meet in meaningful consultation with lineal descendants. I believe that especially in the Kona area, when you look at that landscape, it is rapidly urbanizing. And these spaces are super important. And so if somebody wants to develop them, they need to rise to a pretty high level, for me at least. And I don't consider like a last minute testimony coming in that, you know, I wasn't aware of prior to, or wasn't well documented. That is a little disappointing to me and makes me concerned. And so given that, I think I would object to this motion, and I would be inclined to introduce a motion that perhaps, well, not only that more studies are needed, which I think this motion covers that, but that maybe the opinion is more along the lines of there may be a substantial impact to this historic asset, its connection to the Heiau complex, the Kamehameha complex that Dr. Stone talked about, and just the larger regional cultural landscape and heritage of this area. And therefore, I would be more in support of preserving this area as a historic landscape and preserve that open space.
Would you like to make a motion at this time? Does this feel like a good place to add a motion that we could vote on?
I could make a motion to object to this motion, but I think only Matt and Natalie can withdraw the motion, right?
That'd be, yeah. So, yeah, both these motions that are bolded, those recommendations passed unanimous at the last meeting. I did sort of hear Commissioner Kinney make a motion about the impact, we could get that out of the way, substantial or limited. He mentioned substantial. That could be a singular quick motion that we go ahead and get out of the way as a piece of this letter. And Gene, correct me if I'm wrong, but we could the board modify this language and then make a motion just to transmit the letter as is?
Yeah, I think that actually, and technically we're a little out of bounds right now because I don't believe that you do have a motion on the table. And so, you know, under Robert's rules, you need a motion on the table to be having a discussion. So I think it sounds like maybe the simplest motion to make to really open up your discussion and determine what you're trying to do is determine what the letter should say. And I think maybe one way to sort of open that would be for someone to make a motion that the letter be revised. And, you know, the simple one would be to address whether you want to say substantial or limited, but acceptable. That might be a good one to just open your discussion. And then you can have a fairly wide ranging discussion in there, you know, about what the letter should say. And I think to address a couple of the concerns that I've heard, I think I agree with Kevin and I think your chair that your original motions that are listed here in numbers 1 and 2 are broadly enough written that I think that they do cover most of the concerns that I'm hearing raised. But if you feel like the broadness of those original motions isn't capturing your concerns correctly, then maybe you would want to revise that language to be more specific. Does that make sense? And you could do that. You could kind of discuss doing that within the bounds of a motion to, you know, revise the letter and, you know, accept the letter or accept the letter the way that it's written, whatever you want. And then if you need to make a new motion to amend different pieces of the letter. Is that making sense? I'm trying to get at this kind of in a procedural sense so that we're kind of staying within the bounds of Robert's rules as best we can. Is that helpful?
I think we might be at a place where a motion to revise the letter we see in front of us would be warranted.
Yeah, and just to be clear, you should articulate at least how you want the letter to be revised in your motion. And that doesn't mean that that's the be all end all and everybody has to agree with that. Like, for example, a commissioner could say, I would like to make a motion to amend the letter to delete or limited but acceptable. And somebody can second that. And then you can open a discussion, you know, end up wherever you end up. It doesn't mean that that's absolutely the only thing that you can do. It just opens your discussion for you. And if you need to make, you know, additional motions within that same one to hammer out exactly what the language is, you can do sub motions to do that, but just to open your discussion.
Thank you, Jean. I'm ready to make the motion, but I'm not supposed to, so I please need some help here and support.
Yeah, I could make a motion, Chair Spielman, make a motion to revise the letter as I stated to reflect a substantial impact on historic assets. And I would also like to add into this motion the language, the consideration of the language of preserving historical and open this area as a place for the preservation of the historical and cultural landscape.
Commissioner Hirano seconds.
Okay, so currently we have a motion by Commissioner Kinney, seconded by Commissioner Hirano, and I'd like to open that up for discussion now. Jean's nodding her head. We did something correct. Okay.
Thank you, Gene.
Did I hear correctly that there's two comments? One is that the project will likely have a substantial impact on historic assets. That's like part A. And then part B had to do with preserving historical and preservation of the cultural landscape. Is that reflected in comment number 2, Commissioner Kinney? Or
no, I think I was speaking to the conservation of the space as an open space.
the entire project?
The entire project, yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for clarifying. Okay, so that's the AB of that motion and seconded by Commissioner Hirano. Okay, back for discussion. Thank you.
Is that okay, Commissioner Hirano?
Yes, it is. Just a point of clarification. So do we need to vote on removing limited but acceptable in the opinion? Because I think that might be an easy checkbox if it's the vote to remove that. Or because it's a part of the motion, would it be taken up at the end in a final vote?
That's part of, so the motion that I heard was a 2-part thing, and so it needs to be kept together all as one thing. Unless you want to withdraw the motion and do only the little simple piece first and close the discussion on that and then open up a second motion, that's the other option.
Staff would remind you that the second part of that motion is going to conflict with the second motion. So staff would, I agree with Gene and Commissioner Hirano, would probably be better just to go baby steps here if we're gonna do this and go ahead and have the CRC confirm your opinion of the impact on historical assets as a singular motion, and then we move on.
That is probably cleaner.
So if I might ask for Commissioner Kinney and Commissioner Hirano to revise or withdraw their latest, and then we'll do this one more go on this. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I withdraw the previous motion that I made, and then I would forward a motion again to revise the letter to reflect a substantial impact on historic assets.
Thank you.
The original second, I'm okay with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Kinney and Commissioner Hirano, much appreciated. So currently we have discussion open on an item to remove the words as done so in the letter before us, thereby leaving the sentence, this project will likely have a substantial impact on historic assets, open for discussion for CRC. And not to cut anybody short, jump in and yell, but if anybody, if no discussion, then we could move on to a vote. And
Correct.
maybe we do, I'm sorry, I see Lamaku's hand up. I'm just winging it here.
We're out of public testimony and into discussion, Chair. We'll have to,
Okay.
unfortunately, that's right.
Bye, Lamaku. Okay, so sorry. So we're at removal of the words as shown, and so I'd like to call for a roll call vote, please, on the current motion at hand. And if staff could lead us through that.
Yeah, Chair, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Kinney?
Yes.
Aye or nay?
Aye.
Commissioner Hirano?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Boulay?
Aye.
Nicole? Chair Louis?
Aye.
Or Commissioner Louis? Thank you.
Aye.
And Chair Stewart?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Would it be appropriate now for a commissioner to make a second motion? Commissioner Kinney, I'm looking at you. I think there's a motion pending for the next step of what we want to consider. You're mute, sorry.
Yeah, I think I would like to make a motion to also revise this letter to reflect an opinion that this area is in fact a historic property and should be preserved as one.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Hirano seconds.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kinney and Commissioner Hirano. I'd like to open it up for discussion now, please. The motion on the floor, if I can summarize here, is to revise the letter that this is a historic property and should be preserved. Is that close?
Yes. And I guess I could share some thoughts behind that, why I think that's important. When we look at the Kona landscape, I think many of, and as Dr. Stone and others have testified, many of the prime historic areas, cultural areas, that a lot of them have been bulldozed and developed, and many of them don't exist in this area. And so we have this property here, and the way I look, just my opinion of this particular property is maybe it's not the most the best example of the entire complex that existed there before. It may be the best within this landscape that's out there right now, and if we don't preserve it, then that last these remnants are can be lost, and then it at least from the way that I look at this landscape and this particular property and its connection to resources upslope, there's still like some connection there. And then there's also the connection with the Heiau, which is relatively close to where this development is located. And so after hearing some of the testimony about wanting to preserve this place, having it listed as a potential punk site, and that the community wants this. Lineal descendants apparently want that. I feel like it's my responsibility to also reflect that in my opinion, as well as a commissioner who is charged with, we only have 4 things here that we're really supposed to be doing, right? Protecting and preserving historic, encouraging restoration, rehabilitation, encouraging identification, preservation. And I guess I'll go one step further, kind of speaking to some testimony by Darren Arai and some others that often bring up the cost of developing these plans, the energy, and I respect that, but that's not part of my decision. That's not part of my opinion. I'm fully focused on the space, what that space means to the people that live in that place, and making the best decision based on the information given to me. And based on that, I think this is a prime place for restoration and preservation of a historic site. Sorry, that was a little long-winded, but kind of off the cuff here.
That was excellent. Thank you very much. And there might be another motion in there, but I'm still open for discussion on the prior motion. Which, if I can repeat, was based on revising the letter and that this historic property should be preserved. Any more discussion? Commissioner Louie, I see your hand up, please.
I guess I always have something to say. Yeah, I read through the 2018 inventory survey and the 2020 cultural impact, assessment, and there's no mention of trails. It falls short of mentioning anything about trails or trail remnants. And yet, on page 13 of the AIS, there's like a trail going through the Munn property, Glenn. And that's why I have anxiety over this project, and I think there's no mention of trails identified throughout this throughout the reports, and that's why I wanted I like both the motions that Commissioner Kurishima and Commissioner Clark made, and I think further documentation needs to be done. Find these trails, find the remnants of the trails and document them. And so, that's just my manao, and I wanted to share. Thank you.
Mahalo. Commissioner Clark, please.
Yeah, I guess for Kealoha, I wanted to clarify. I guess the recommendation is going to the Leeward Planning Commission. Would your recommendation be not to allow for the 10-year time extension, or is it to keep the whole property open space and for preservation? I guess would be my question.
Hi, guys. This is your Deputy Corp Counsel for a moment. Just to jump in and remind you of everybody's kuleana. It's the Planning Commission who gets to make that decision. This commission was asked to weigh in on the effect on historic and cultural properties. So you guys don't actually recommend one way or the other about whether they should approve something. That's their kuleana to decide. You're just letting them know whether that proposal would have an effect on the things that you guys are concerned with.
Sure.
Yeah, Matt, just to answer your question, it's really just to build on the substantial impact on historic assets, on that opinion. Therefore, preserving this space may be the best use of this particular area. Advocating for preservation.
Thank you. And then that we could replace the two amendments potentially in the letter to just say that.
We could.
I guess it could, I mean, it seems like there could be room for both. I mean, there's going to be a substantial impact. Maybe the best use of the space is to keep it in preservation and perpetuity. However, regardless of that, more studies need to be conducted in this area. It definitely, if this developer would like to continue creating plans, they're going to have to do the things that you've indicated. So any further work in developing a plan for potentially building on this space is going to require all of those elements.
So perhaps we could put first, as looks like Kevin's doing, that the Cultural Resource Commission would like to see this property preserved in perpetuity. If the development's allowed to occur, you would need to follow these steps.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect, at least in my opinion.
That gives us a nice framework to have an if-and situation instead of it just being the one letter. I like that also. Is there any potential? I heard Ponk, I wrote it down, I underlined it. Is there any potential for commissioners in this conversation to discuss Ponk and the testimony we've heard about it?
I can maybe help you with that a little bit. Jean Campbell, again, your Deputy Corporation Counsel. I'm also the Deputy Corporation Counsel for the Ponk Commission. This property was evaluated, I believe it was last year, and did make it onto the list. So it would be, to be honest, I do not recall whether it has received. So the way that the Ponk process works is the public or interested landowners can make a suggestion to the commission. The commission evaluates things, and properties that they believe are worth protection can be voted on to be added to the list by the commission. The commission forwards its recommendation to the mayor, who comments on it and forwards it on to the county council. The county council person for the district in which the property sits can introduce a resolution which would authorize the finance department to negotiate with the landowner for a potential purchase of some sort. This one made it onto the list according to the commission's vote, and I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head whether it has yet received an approved resolution at the council. I can find that out if you want to know. But the one caveat that I will put out there is the preservation fund that Ponk is looking at does not have any variety of eminent domain authority. And so any property that has a landowner who does not want to sell it is not going to be approached by the finance department, because the finance department does not have the authority to force anybody to sell something that they don't want to. In this case, I don't believe we've gotten any indication from the landowner that they would be willing to sell the property to the county under the Ponk program. So at this point, whether or not it has a resolution, unless we heard from the landowner that they were interested in selling to the county through the Ponk program, that's not something that we would expect to happen anytime soon.
Thank you for clarifying that. So maybe to finish out Commissioner Kinney's first statement, I had some notes here. The CRC recommends that the project be preserved in maybe should be preserved is the right language. Maybe it doesn't have to be in anything, just preserved.
Yeah, that looks great to me.
Look at that, magic.
Would we like to add something there about if if the development is allowed to occur, we recommend the following steps or the next two motions or whatever, A and B. I don't know if we change them.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing because currently one creates a very different opinion than 2 and 3.
Yes.
Now we create more of the if-then solution. It's like the two-step. Is Planning Commission approving? Gene, sorry, can I ask that question? Is Planning Commission's next meeting or whatever their agenda meeting to approve?
It would be to make a decision. They deferred their decision pending input from you all. So,
And specifically on the 10-year time extension?
yes, they are only addressing the request for a 10-year time extension. This isn't like a brand new approval or not approval. This is a request for a 10-year time extension.
Okay. What if it's not approved? What if they say we want these recommendations to be upheld? How would that process in this last sentence?
What do you mean? If the planning commission doesn't approve the time extension?
Well, yeah, it says be placed on any approved time extension. So if they don't approve it, are the recommendations still in play?
Yeah, I see.
You know,
If they don't approve a time extension, then the landowner has exactly the approval that they have today. And to be honest, off the top of my head, I will admit I don't remember exactly where that puts them. You know, it's a project with existing approvals, and my recollection, and if Mr. Arai is still around, we might ask him to clarify exactly where it's at, and my apologies for throwing you under the bus if you're still here. The approval that they have exists today, and they've simply come in and asked for a time extension to finish the project. So if the time extension is not approved, they would continue to have whatever they have today.
would our recommendations still hold sway at that point? I think that's my follow-up question.
To the extent that they're, I guess by hold sway, you're meaning, is there an opportunity for the planning commission to condition something? The answer would be no. Because if they disapprove the time extension, then there's no revision to the existing permissions or entitlements that the landowner has. But again, I don't remember all of the detail about exactly where they are at. It may be that essentially the development fails at that point because they can't viably move on without the time extension. But again, that's a factual matter that I apologize, I just don't remember.
If it helps, I could try to provide some context, at least from the zoning standpoint. Would that help?
Can you hear Darren, guys?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay. If it's okay, the RM zoning was put into place by virtue of the ordinance 02-121, if I remember correctly. That is the ordinance that has specific performance timeframes, and they basically need extensions to those performance timeframes, which is why the 10-year extension before you. Should the county council ultimately vote to not grant the 10-year time extension, in essence, the ordinance goes into limbo because they are not able to exercise any privileges given to them by that particular zoning ordinance for the RM zone lands. And the council will then have to decide, by not granting the time extension, what then becomes of the lands. Does it basically revert back to its original Ag 5 zoning? And that's a possibility, but the council will have to enact a separate a zoning amendment request in order to revert the land from RM back into, for example, Ag 5. So again, it's going to be a multi-step process. Any recommendations you make today is going to be directly associated with the amendment request that's pending before the Beaver Planning Commission and the County Council to extend any requirements beyond the current RM zoning. I think it's personally inappropriate because, again, the request is specific to the amendment to Ordinance 02-121, which is the RM zoning. Hopefully that helps. And it's been a while, so hopefully I'm correct.
Thank you, Mr. Arai. That does help, especially with understanding the levels of the process and county council being involved in that final vote. And thanks for live texting this. I think it's Kevin. Good typing skills.
I'm trying.
While this is coming up, I just want to thank everybody for being here today and taking time. I know we're going through this in detail, and I feel like the amount of effort and time dedicated to this, I appreciate the CRC for that. Thank you. And I believe in terms of the procedural side, this sentence number one, item number one being written now, would be the motion on the table from Commissioner Kinney, seconded by Commissioner Arano. Okay, thank you. I see heads nodding. Let the record show affirmative. I learned that in jury duty. Judge would always say that when the lawyers would nod their heads. we haven't called for a vote yet. I think we're still in discussion. Is there anything that anyone would like to add? I hate to just run right through this, but it's opened up for commissioners now.
Well, I would just like to mahalo ke aloha nui o puna, Commissioner Kinney. Thanks for opening up this space and this wording, because it does, I believe, for me, reflect my thoughts and my feelings. So being able to have the opportunity to go onto the site visit onto this aina just further affirms and confirms that what's being written and our recommendation does follow suit, perhaps, with what was felt when we walked the aina there. No question that it is significant and that the impacts would be quite substantial. So just mahalo, and thanks, Kevin, for your great typing skills. I think it is capturing the essence and sentiment of our recommendation. Mahalo anui.
I guess, Kevin, I think just pick up on Kule just said, the historic and cultural significance of the property, maybe a good thing to put in there.
It's been second? Yeah. We've discussed, we could call for vote, Chair.
Okay, if no more discussion, I would like very much to call for a vote if no more discussion. And if we can do that by roll call, please, staff.
Yeah. Commissioner Kinney?
Aye.
Commissioner Hirano?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Keakealani?
Aye.
Commissioner Louie?
Can I say Kanalua? Just asking. Can I
I'm sorry, I
say
didn't hear you.
Kanalua? Can I say Kanalua?
Yeah.
Okay, Kanalua.
And Chair Spielman?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. I feel like based on what we heard from Corp Counsel that maybe we don't bring up the PONC, but I only just throw it out there again.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by bring up PONC.
Make a motion that we would recommend as such, but our
Yeah, that's,
limited.
I'm afraid that recommending what, well, PONC has already, the commission has already acted. And, you know, and at this point, it's with the county council. And so it's, I don't think that I think recommending that the council pass a resolution having something to do with PONC is outside the scope of this commission. Let's go with that.
That's very clear. Thank you very much. Okay. So
There is a place in the rule regarding use of grant funds, but my understanding is that PONC doesn't have access to grant funds. Is that right, Jean?
Yeah, I think that would be, again, outside, yeah, that, I don't think that's what's contemplated by those grant funds.
Got it.
I'll extend the question asked earlier of the commissioners, if there are any further motions or recommendations to forward to the planning commission at this time? Or are we generally comfortable with the letter as it stands, and then we could look at a motion for authorizing this letter? Or yes, okay.
All right, Commissioner Hirano makes a motion to accept and approve this letter of recommendation to the Leeward Planning Commission. I think it's Leeward Planning Commission.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark seconds the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Hirano and Commissioner Clark. I'll open it up for discussion. And if no discussion, then I'd like to call on a roll call vote, please, staff.
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Hirano?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Keakelani?
Aye.
Commissioner Louie?
Sorry. Aye.
And Chair Spielman?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Okay. Are we complete with agenda item 1?
Sorry, Commissioner Kinney.
Sorry.
Aye.
All right, now the motion passes. Sorry, my fault. Thank you.
Okay. Motion passed. Thank you very much. Are we complete with agenda item 1, staff?
As soon as you close.
I have to close the item?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to close the item and move on to agenda item number 2 at this time. Okay.
And if you wanted to call another recess, or if anybody needs to take a break, or Lua.
Okay, please, let's do a 10-minute break, please, and then we'll re-adjourn. Thank you. We'll take a quick break.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Whenever you're ready, Chair.
Okay, I think maybe we just wait for the other commissioners to get back on. I see Commissioner Clark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're good on commissioners. 5 commissioners, still have quorum.
Yes.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much for joining us again. We're going to reconvene here with agenda item number 2. Ho'omalu Workforce Housing Project in Waikoloa, PL-CRC-2023-000005. Location Waikoloa, Ongpoa'a, South Kohala District, Island of Hawaii. TN case 36-9-008:032. Are there any members of the public that would wish to provide testimony on this that we didn't hear from earlier today, staff?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Very good. Thank you very much. Sorry, Commissioner Louie, did you have your hand up?
Yes. So because I physically worked on this project, do I need to recuse myself?
I guess that's a question for me.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep hitting the wrong button and turning my video on and off when I don't mean to. I think that's a question that's up to you. If your involvement was fairly significant in the past, out of an abundance of caution, it might be a good idea to do that. If it was very insignificant, then you could make a disclosure. So long as you feel that you could be, the real test at the end of the day, if you had an insignificant role in the past, would be, do you feel that you could be impartial about decision making regarding the project? But I think if you had a significant role of some sort in the past, recusal might be a good idea. But it is.
Then yeah, I have to do that.
Okay.
Sorry, makes you guys short. Sorry.
I think that's my next question. Do we maintain quorum?
No, if we're at 5 right now and we lose Commissioner Louie, then we do also lose quorum, I'm afraid.
Okie dokie.
As long as Kealoha turns his camera back on, then you'll have 5.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I missed him. Kealoha. There we go. Okay, so
Okay, sorry. Question, Aaron. So I was consulted on the project, so I guess I asked the same question for myself.
Yeah, again, it would be the same answer. It depends on the level of your involvement in the past, and it's, you're the only one who knows what that was and what would be the best way to go.
Could I prompt some questions? Commissioner Louie seemed to indicate work was involved, maybe that being paid or compensated. Maybe what Commissioner Keakealani is talking about is a voluntary lineal descendant investigation, which might be far less conflictory.
Yeah, if I would imagine that being unpaid, tilts towards if essentially you provided testimony to them, that's not the same level of involvement. But again, then the threshold question is, can you be impartial? And if you feel that you can be impartial, then you're fine. If you don't feel that you can be impartial in your decision making, then you should recuse.
Okay, thanks. I'll stay on.
Mahalo. Okay, we have quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 members in attendance. Commissioner Louie will recuse herself from this agenda item. We do not have any public testifiers at this time. I will get to that page. I would like to ask the applicant or representative to introduce themselves and members of their team and provide their presentation if there is one for this meeting.
And as staff, I'll just jump into, we, just as a quick recap, of course, you guys have had the site visit. This is the meeting to have discussion. And yes, of course, if the applicant wishes to add anything, now's the time.
Okay, so if,
But you guys could just get into discussion, is my understanding.
okay, very good. Sorry, I see Mr. Head there.
Aloha, everybody. I actually represent the landowner in this, and the developer's here. Ren Kimura, who is the project manager for this, and I know we have Dr. Alan Hahn, whose firm provided the study for the report, the archaeological inventory study. And I believe we have Solomon here, who worked in the field, was the lead field investigator. And I think Stanford Carr is in another meeting, but he may pop in shortly. I'm not sure how we want to go about this. I think you're going to, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to discuss the site visit field report that was submitted. In addition to, there were topics that were proposed for discussion amongst the commissioners. And we would, at some point in time, when appropriate, Mr. Chair, would like to have Dr. Hahn also weigh in on those topics as well. But we'll leave that to you when you deem it appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Head. So this might be a little bit of a hybrid, no direct presentation at this time, but available team members for discussion purposes. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'd like to say that I really like reading the report and hearing not only the report, but seeing the pictures, especially the pictures, and apologies for me not sharing the pictures that I took when Commissioner Louie and Commissioner Keakealani and I visited the Kona 3 site. I did have the pictures. I had intended to share them, and those go a long way. Thank you, Matt and the PIG group for being so in depth with the report. I just kind of turn it over to commissioners at this point. We got a thorough report at the last meeting, and a lot of sites, a lot of importance with the slicks and other features, and so I just open it up for discussion at this time.
And if staff could just jump in one more time. We just finished up Kona 3. I'd ask commissioners to sort of think along those same lines. If, in order to move this forward, we can think about what's our opinion of the impact, and then what recommendation we may have, if any. That's all. Thanks.
And maybe to add to Kevin, thank you, Kevin. We could also request more information. That's one of our options.
Yes.
Okay, to give a recommendation, and then or opinion, and then a motion to direct staff to make this letter, which we would review at the next meeting. So that's the procedural requirement.
You could do that. We don't have to. I can take the motions directly into a letter and send it off. The last one, as you know, was drawn out a little specific, and if this one does not raise to that level, then we can just carry the motions forward after the meeting.
Could maybe I ask a question of the commissioners who are on the PIG? One thing that it's hard to convey in a written report that definitely follows Western guidelines. What was the feeling on the site? And maybe, because I love hearing Auntie Ku'ule, Commissioner Keakealani talk, then maybe you could voice in on that, and anybody else who was there as well. I'm very curious to know.
Sure, thanks. The feel of the Aina, the place, much like the other site visits that I was privileged to be upon, or any Aina really. For me, a couple of things is looking at the number of sites. And this is, I think it happened almost instantly when I initially went out for a site visit with Solomon. And I just thought, wait a minute, what are all of these blue and orange and pink tags? And he said, that's all sites that we marked, he and Nicole. So one, I think that is a bit overwhelming in a good way, that there was that amount of sites. And we all see the reports and we see the numbers, over 10,000 sites. So you could imagine, right, with that concentration of a number of sites, definitely a high mana place. And then I think another thing that stands out is or a couple of things is the basins. The depth of the basins are certainly unique in my view, my vantage point of certain of places I've been able to be amongst and see. They're quite substantial. And again, back to the feel of the place, very high mana. And then relative to its surrounding, right? And that was one of the things on the site visit, is for us to kind of not look at it just in its what parameters perhaps are drawn on the maps, but let those fade, and then you see the extent and the connections of the things that are in the vicinity, close vicinity, Keahualono. Out from that, Keahualono would be, and the trail, the Alaloa would be in the immediate vicinity. Out of that, Hi'iakaheao, out from that, Kahapapa and Ku'uali'i fish ponds, then your coastal village of Kapalawa. Nevertheless, looking at it in that regard, relative to the cultural landscape that it is a part of and not separate from, but it is always beautiful to be out there and high. I keep saying that, high mana, but that's kind of how I relay that forward. But more so to, or more over and an extension of that feeling, is because this is an intersection, a really big intersection, not just moku or districts where North Kona and South Kohala meet, but also an intersection of 3 land divisions. Waikoloa, Anaiho'omalu, and Pu'uanahulu intersect in this immediate vicinity. So yeah, I guess that would be some of my initial sharings, but we had other commissioners there that day as well, which was wonderful. We're thankful for the access and the day that we had, at the time we had to be there. But mahalo for this time to share.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark, you were there as well, and forgive me for not remembering the other member that may have attended. Was it Commissioner Kuroshima?
Yes, and Kealoha was there as well.
Oh, aloha. Okay, very good. So if I could call on Commissioner Kealoha and Commissioner Clark to please share any insights that you have for discussion purposes, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I could do that, Chair. Yeah, it was just a wonderful experience to be a guest in this place. I remember the feeling of vastness, and looking at all of the artifacts and just how widespread the work that was being done in this particular area. And one of the things that was impressed on me too was just how hot it was. It was so vela and the wind, and how it just, all these elements are just penetrating, and and I kind of felt the same way about this cultural landscape too. It was so vast, and it was like just shining up and penetrating me from all angles, and how important the space was to our ancestors, and how important it is to us now and future generations. And I also felt thankful for Mr. Solomon Kaliiva. He gave us a wonderful tour and really sharing all of his knowledge with us. And of course, Auntie Kule, mahalo you as well for guiding us through that space. Yeah, so those were some of the feelings I had. There were also some other feelings I had too. As we walked through the space, there was some like vandalization of the space. There was we did see rubbish and then sort of past development activities where maybe bulldozers and things had come into the area. So those things struck me as well. And then also just kind of looking broadly, as Auntie Kule was saying, kind of across that whole region, looking at the spaces, the connection of these spaces from the Mauka to Makai, and across the coastline, and also, obviously the amount of development that has already occurred in these areas. And I think the last thing that I kind of took away from the PIG experience also was in thinking about this development and wondering about where does it end? Do we end up, if we continue to develop these spaces, will we see like another Kailua Kona, a highly dense urban landscape in Waikoloa? And what does that mean for our future generations? And will they have the same experience, this penetrating experience that I had? So those are just some of the kind of feelings I took away from the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kinney. Commissioner Clark, I'd love to call on you too at this time.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Chair. Yeah, I was really thankful for the opportunity to visit the site. And I want to thank Solomon and Alan and all the folks for showing us around and allowing us the opportunity to go out there. I also really appreciated being out there with Kule and Kealoha and Natalie, and just hearing everyone's mana'o on the place. And for me, it was seeing, I've worked nearby and I've seen other sites similar, but the connection and the extent of this historic property and landscape, and the number of people and amount of time that it must have taken to create this amount of work packed into the lava flows in this area. And just to think about, how it might have been in the past and the people moving through there and what went on along this boundary and the significance of that, and how important it is today to the descendants of that area. And it was really powerful to me, and it meant a lot to be out there with everyone for that site visit. I guess since I've been out there, I along the lines of what Kealoha mentioned is, the extent of the development and where does it stop, and how can we protect these important places, these landscapes, and still allow, I hate having to decide between affordable housing and cultural sites. I think there's a place for both, and how can we do that sustainably on this island? And that's where I'm at. I hate to have to pit the two against each other, because the culture and the archaeological sites are really important to me, and I also see the need for affordable housing. So that's what I've been thinking about a lot since I've been out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. We remain in discussion of the PIG field report. I hate to call it the PIG. Is there something else we can acronym that as?
If it's helpful.
Just call it subcommittee report.
Yeah, I was going to say, the PONC Commission didn't like calling them pigs either. And so they opted for PING, PI, using the NG. So you could, if you want to opt it, follow PONC's lead, you could use PING instead of pig.
Could we be POG? At least that would be, sorry.
Permitted outer action group, I don't know.
Well, I very much appreciate the commissioners volunteering on what's usually a weekend and going out there. And I think these field trips are essential to our work. I just like to keep that going. And any lessons learned that we can get out of this for the next one. I look at this as a learning experience, and we're not going to be 50 years. So what's the next CRC going to be looking at and doing? And having that report or protocol of what to do is going to be very helpful at that time. And for us moving forward. And then just to bring it back, that we can look at, in purposes of discussion and moving forward with today's meeting, that we can look at a motion which may include a request for more information about the project, a recommendation including any possible modifications, mitigation measures, or suggestions and comments regarding the proposal. And the recommendation can include an opinion. That's number 3, sorry. The opinion, we have 3 choices. Not likely to impact historic asset, will likely have a limited but acceptable impact on the historic asset, or will likely have a substantial impact on the historic asset. And that's where that's our framework for this afternoon. And we could continue discussing, or we can open to a motion at this time with the thought of having a letter similar to what we previously, at least as a template, to what we previously reviewed under the last agenda item.
Chair, can I ask a question of the applicants or the, I guess I'd like to hear again the mitigation that's being proposed for the site, and a little bit about development and how the impacts on the historic property are going to be mitigated.
This is Alan Hahn of Hahn and Associates. I can address that for you. Looking at your topics for discussion, there are actually sort of 3 things that are in here. The initial one is, we're seeking consultation with the CRC initially for the AIS and for getting your recommendation regarding the specific site significance and mitigation treatments that are outlined on table 8 in our AIS. It's about page 119. Many of the rest of most of the topics for discussion actually deal with subjects that will be covered under a data recovery plan and a site preservation plan that we would anticipate that we will be seeking seeking consultation with CRC in the context of preparing those, which will be coming very close on the heels of the AIS once the AIS is approved by the State Historic Preservation Division. But specifically in response to your question, Matt, we're first of all proposing that a nearly 4-acre portion of the quarried area that has the workshops and quarry pits and whatnot be preserved in addition to an adjacent parcel that was approved under an earlier development. It'll that way increase the preserve within this area to nearly 7 acres. The specifics for signage and access will be dealt with in a preservation plan that will be, as I said, developed very shortly after. Just from a procedural standpoint, as I mentioned, SHPD won't even look at a preservation plan or data recovery plan until the AIS is approved. So we need to get over that hurdle. And then, as I said, we'll be developing these the preservation plan as well as the data recovery plan. So part of mitigation is we'll be preserving this large concentration of of the site, of the features within the site. We're going to be proposing data recovery, which is going to be focused on doing compositional analysis of a large sample of 1 to 200 samples of the quarry stone as well as actual artifacts, so that we'll be able to develop essentially a fingerprint, if you will, for this whole quarry area that we hope will allow, as future studies progress and as artifacts, that is abraders from other sites are analyzed, that we will be able to determine if they are in fact from this quarry, as well as in time exactly what the mechanism of that distribution would have been for these items, because we think that they may be actually fairly widespread and may come from here. But as I said, the data recovery that we're proposing to mitigate destruction of a portion of the site will consist of this compositional analysis done in cooperation with the geochronology lab at the University of Hawaii at Hilo, with Peter Mills is the specific faculty member that would be involved in that. In addition to the data recovery, obviously we're proposing preservation of this 4-acre area, as well as as you may recall, there was an open space area in between some of the proposed buildings. And the intent is to also preserve as much of that as feasible. Some of that may end up being initially disturbed and renaturalized and essentially be open space, but every effort will be maintained to preserve additional features in that area. The preservation plan will obviously describe these areas. They're going to be preserved in perpetuity. That would be for forever. Was actually a question in your recommendations. And we'll be proposing walking paths, signage, that sort of thing. And the specifics of that will be detailed in a preservation plan that we will also seek CRC's comments on. I suppose additional mitigation would be monitoring, archaeological monitoring done under the auspices of an SHPD approved data monitoring plan would also serve to mitigate the destruction of a portion of this site. As you noticed when you were out there, this site has unfortunately been impacted over the years, partly because of the fact that this area there was a previous inventory survey and data recovery plan, preservation plans that were implemented for this area that were approved back in the late 80s. At any rate, there is some disturbance to this portion of it. There are undisturbed areas to the east where there is an 800-foot wide swath of preservation extending to Queen Kaahumanu Highway and the development, as well as the area borders state park lands, over 1,000 acres of state park lands immediately to the south, where this quarry continues, and those relatively undisturbed areas that are also part of this quarry will be preserved. I think that's it. Solomon, anything else I'm missing here in terms of what's proposed for mitigation?
No, that pretty much covers it. The only other thing would be the western boundary of the project area is bounded by the various buffers for the Kings Trail and the Forerunner Trail on that side.
Can I chime in as well, Dr. Hahn? Just to add some math to the areas that have been previously set aside for preservation and that are being proposed for preservation, to the 8 acres that Dr. Hahn mentioned. if you combine those areas of the 28 acres, you're looking at 36% of the site, not including the area that includes the petroglyph on kind of the central south border. 36% of the site will be set aside for preservation in perpetuity. It's probably closer to 40 because I'm not including the 30-foot buffer around that beautiful petroglyph that those that came on the site got to visit. Just wanted to make the commission aware of that.
That's very, thank you, Mr. Hahn and Mr. Head. Thank you. And Mr. Hiva. Sorry, I'm just reading the name on the screen. Sorry. Nice to meet you, Solomon. So what I'm hearing maybe is that the presenter applicant is planning to come back to CRC. Maybe this letter is too soon. Staff, can you advise on that?
Yeah, you guys can still make an opinion on the project. Sounds like it might be something like limited but acceptable, and then you know, based on that high percentage of preservation. And so anything I'd say that you wanted to recommend now would be toward that preservation plan, like recommendations that they make to include this in their preservation plan, and that could be topics that were brought up in the site visit report, maybe, or if the CRC is not, then you can. I think Jean can chime in, but you could defer it. Of course, you don't have to act today.
I think my question is: do we expect to receive the preservation plan as part of our consultation with the applicant?
We would expect, as I said, the thing that we're looking for, I think we need most immediately is we need the AIS. We need to get SHPD approval of the AIS. We've made all the revisions they've requested, done all the consultation that they've requested, with the one exception being CRC, and they wanted CRC. Okay. And so, the SHPD doesn't allow you to submit a data recovery plan or a site preservation plan until you have an approved AIS. So, we're seeking approval of AIS so that we can then quickly move to finishing the data recovery and preservation plans, which will then be submitted to SHPD for review. But we would also anticipate, based on the rules, that those documents would be also shared with CRC for any comment they may have. As that process goes on, the review process goes on with SHPD, subsequent to the AIS approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Those specifics are very helpful. I see Commissioner Keakealani's hand up. Please go ahead.
Mahalo. I apologize. I do need to leave. I gotta go to my car and go drive to Kiholo. I have a 2:00 meeting there. So I guess my question is perhaps for staff, would it be acceptable if I jumped on my phone and continued on? Because I know my departure is gonna cause us to lose quorum. So just wanting some advisement there, but I gotta go.
So long as you can still participate with a camera and video, a camera and audio on your phone, that's okay.
Okay. Alrighty, I shall do that.
If I will note, if we lose connection to Commissioner Keakealani, we lose quorum. So
sorry.
Yeah, it's yes.
Okay.
So please be careful driving. Please.
I will. I'll log on my phone. Mahalo, you guys.
So I think we probably, Chair, need a recess to allow our commissioner to log off and jump on her phone.
Okay. We'll break for now. We'll reconvene when Commissioner Keakealani is back on the video. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Aloha.
Aloha. Okay, main thing, look at the road. We just asked for Commissioner Clark to log back in and we should be good to go here.
And Commissioner Louis' camera.
No, she's not. She
Oh,
recused.
oh, that's right. Sorry, Syracuse.
I have a question, but I'll wait for Commissioner Clark. I think the question is to Dean.
Hi, Commissioner Clark. If you're there, can you please turn your camera on?
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for the break. We have Commissioner Keakealani with us. Continuing the agenda item number 2, I have a question. I'm not exactly sure and understanding what Mr. Hahn described, and I'm clear on that process. Does the information today warrant a letter to Shifty? And if so, are we making recommendations and opinions to Shifty?
That's a good question. And Kevin, you might be better at answering this than I am. I think this came to you all from the Planning Commission. Is that correct?
No.
No, it was as the applicant stated, it was recommended by Shifty. Basically, it seemed like as a condition of AIS approval that this commission be consulted with first. So Shifty, I believe, is the applicant just needs some something, and frankly, even maybe the fact that it was heard would be enough, that this board has reviewed and made some finding, even if preliminary, on the project. Again, if there was a communication to be developed, it may be that, you know, this has a limited but acceptable impact on resources, and that, you know, it could be as short and brief as the CRC looks forward to reviewing the preservation plan prior to it being approved by SHPD or something like that. I think there's some options here. And the board could the commission could absolutely, you know, we can confer with the applicant on that.
Thank you both. And I see Commissioner Clark's hand up. Please go ahead, Matt.
I can add a little bit to that, Chair. SHPD basically asked for consultation, and consultation is generally on the significance of the sites and how they're assessed for their significance, and also about the mitigation and the proposed treatment of the sites is often, and adding history to the information to the AIS. Once SHPD approves the AIS, because these sites some of them are significant under E, I believe those are some of the preservation and data recovery, I think they would continue the consultation process as part of doing the preservation planning and the data recovery planning is how the process generally works. So typically when they ask for these, SHPD is looking for help with determining if the significance of the site has been determined, if it's an E site, that appropriate cultural folks have been consulted, and that you know, any recommendations are maybe considered from those folks who were consulted. And I guess that brings me, I had a couple questions. I did want to ask Kule one question before she left, but I guess also from, you know, SHPD asked for additional consultation with other cultural lineage descendants of the area and community members and OHA. Have you guys have done all that, and now it's just CRC that's left to consult with?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then I guess for Kule, if you can hear me, I'm curious, how do you feel about the recommended mitigation?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. You know, it is, I definitely speak as a lineal descendant and Ohana member. Of course, I am not the only voice. So I bring forward my opinion as such, that I think I voiced it from day one. Great project, but wrong site. There's too much that'll be erased. Again, I'm appreciative and thankful for the efforts that have been made, and how awesome there's a 36 or 40% preservation, you know, percentage that'll be preserved. But I like Matt, you said earlier, to be up against, right, a project that is so necessary, housing and affordable in the ways that Stanford Carr has put it forward to be affordable. That my is able to be a part of that housing is a good thing. Is it at the expense though of what we have left? Again, I continue to voice that, right, we're dealing with remnants. What we deal with are the things that are left over within the cultural landscape, because much has been erased, much has been wiped away. So my opinion is that the site in its entirety needs to be cared for. If there is another place, which is what I think I had asked for in consultations, and I think I believe there was looking into this question of, is there no place else that this project could go? And the answer that came back was no, there isn't another place. But my opinion will remain the same, that this site in its entirety does need to be preserved. And can we go back to the drawing board? Can we look again? There's existing condo units or whatnot, right? That's a heavily developed area. Can this good project not fit someplace else instead of on the proposed AINA that it is? So I hope you guys caught that. I'm traveling down quite high road. I'm not sure if I'm still connected, but I hope I am.
You're good. You're connected. We heard almost every word, 99%. Sorry, Commissioner Matt just stepped away. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Clark, did that help answer?
Yeah, I really agree with Kule. I think it's a great project, and it's just such a shame to see what'll happen to the site. And I don't know how that affects our recommendations to Shifty, but I agree with her opinion on this.
So to sum up, would the opinion be that there was a substantial impact to the historic asset? If we're using the same language as, I know it's a different application, but those are our choices. Would it, sorry, it says not likely to impact a historic asset, will likely have a limited but acceptable impact, or will likely have a substantial impact on a historic asset. Those are our opinion allowances to put into the letter to Shifty.
I mean, my opinion would be it's a substantial impact, and then the mitigation is fine. What's preserved, what they presented, and I think they did a great job documenting the site. It's just you're still losing about 60% of the site, and you can't bring that back.
Understood. Thank you. I wanted to get some clarity on that for the group. I think I'm still hung up on giving a recommendation to Shifty only because we haven't seen the preservation plan, and I hate to play the cart before the horse game, but without seeing, I mean, I think our recommendation would be that we would want to see the preservation plan, and we would want to be, as a Cultural Resource Commission, involved with the developer and their plans. Is that a correct statement?
I certainly think we could say that, and that we'd like to be consulted as this project moves forward regarding the mitigation commitments.
And I feel, sorry, I'm not trying to direct traffic on this, but does it feel like we could maybe look at a motion in consideration of what we've been discussing? Or are we still in discussion? Which is fine. No pressure.
Hi,
You
all.
guys are still in this.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, this is Jean. I would encourage you to make a motion, because again, we really, Robert's rules, discussion should be following a motion. But I also note that I think I heard Commissioner Ku'ule say that she actually has a meeting at 2 o'clock. And so whatever you're going to do today, it sounds like you've got about another 15 minutes to do it in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess as a follow-up, and perhaps this is what Kevin was going to say, I do think, Chair, that, or maybe it was Commissioner Clark, you don't need to essentially give the green light to everything today, if that's helpful to everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Just to clarify, so if we do make a motion at this point, it's to acknowledge that we have been consulted as the CRC in this project at the very least, I think that's what I heard is the request of the applicant. For them to continue on the Shipty preservation plan piece, correct?
I agree with that statement, but maybe someone else can weigh in too on that.
And then my second question would be, is that within our purview to write a letter directly to Shipty? Or do we have to go to council or to mayor?
Since Kevin clarified for us, the request came from Shipty, you would respond directly to Shipty, and that is within your kuleana.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Thank you. That's helpful.
Well, I guess I'll play as part of this discussion. I can play devil's advocate and echoing what Kule said. We believe the site should be preserved to the maximum extent possible. We'd like to be consulted on future preservation planning and data recovery plans. And, if it's allowed to continue, or whatever.
And to me, that sounds like something that would fall under a recommendation. And then the question, do we want to involve an opinion as well? And then time check, we have like 10 minutes. So
Yeah,
maybe
you could wrap a motion together. You could make a motion that there is a limited but acceptable impact, and for that reason, we've been consulted, and we will continue to be consulted on the preservation plan and data recovery, like he was just saying.
And then Kevin, just to ask, are we locked into that limited but acceptable, or are we allowed to also give an opinion of another?
Oh, yes, sorry, any one of the three.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Sorry.
I'd love to call for a motion, but I'm not going to call it myself, but I'd love to get some support on a motion when the commissioners are ready, if acceptable.
I guess I could start a motion. I believe there'll be a substantial impact to cultural resources within the project area.
And if I could get a second, please, on that.
Hi, Commissioner Hirano, second.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Hirano, much appreciated. So we have on the floor now a motion, yes, that there will be a substantial impact within the cultural resources area. And if we could ask for discussion on that, although we may have discussed already, maybe I could call for a roll call vote on that with staff support.
Yes, Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Hirano?
Aye.
Who's not recused? Commissioner Kailani?
Aye.
And Chair Spielman? Oh, Commissioner Kinney?
Aye.
And Chair Spielman?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Vote passed unanimously. So that's an opinion that would go in a letter from CRC to Shipty. And then we're allowed to also make recommendations. So if it's possible to get a motion for a recommendation along the lines of what we've been discussing, I would frame it as that the CRC wants to be involved with future consultations and steps in the project. But I'll leave that to
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we could include in any communication that the CRC is, desires to remain involved in the consultation after the AIS is approved, and as directly as part of the preservation plan and data recovery plan.
Did I just hear Kevin make a motion?
No.
All right, sorry. I'm not trying to be joking. I'm just, I know we're pressed for time.
I can make.
I was trying.
Chair, motion, I guess I'll start it out with the CRC believes that the site should be preserved to the extent possible. And that the CRC be consulted on any future preservation and data recovery planning.
And if I can ask for a second on that motion, please.
Commissioner Hirano, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hirano and Commissioner Clark. Thank you very much. I'd like to open it up for discussion, which I think we've already had. If anybody has anything they'd like to add, jump in now.
Sorry, can we just get the motion reread? I want to make sure I got it correctly in my head.
Can I call on staff to weigh in? I have some notes here too.
Yeah, that the motion was that the project is anticipated to have a substantial impact on historic assets and should be preserved to the extent possible, that the entirety of the site should be preserved to the maximum extent possible. And the CRC recommends that they remain in consultation with the applicant as pertains to the preservation plan and data recovery plan or any other, mitigative. Yeah, those two.
Thank you.
So discussion currently open. If anybody would like to say anything, jump in. Otherwise, I'd like to call for a roll call vote with staff support, please.
Hearing no discussion, I can call that roll call vote. Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Kinney? Hirano?
Aye.
Sorry, no. Commissioner
Oh.
Kinney?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Keokealani?
Aye.
And Chair Spielman?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And do we need a motion to get staff to support this letter writing? And how do we circulate that to get between now and 5 minutes from now when the meeting ends?
I think what you could do, what I would offer up is the commissioners somebody could make a motion to authorize the chair to work directly with the staff to formalize the actual language of the letter, assuming that it is only done consistent with the two motions that you just approved, and authorize the chair to act independently with the staff. Essentially, I'm not doing a very good job of this. Authorize the chair to work directly with the staff to finalize a letter reflecting the two motions that you just made and submit that to Shifty.
Yes. Please.
Hirano makes a motion to approve the chair of the CRC to work directly with the commission staff in drafting a letter to Shifty incorporating the recommendations and motions of this commission.
And the opinion.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you both. I love it. Moving forward. Thank you. Okay, Gene and staff, where are we now currently and what can
Need to call roll call vote for that, that's all.
please
Yeah.
can we call
So,
roll call vote?
yeah, Commissioner Hirano?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Kinney?
Aye.
Commissioner Keokealani?
Aye.
Chair Spielman?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you all. I don't know if we're technically closing out this agenda item, but I would like to move towards adjournment of the meeting. What's next, staff?
Yeah, you can close this item. We've done administrative matters out of order. The next meeting is looking like it's August 9th, and there's no further business at this time.
Yes, correct. The next meeting will be August 9th, Wednesday at 10 a.m. And thank you all the commissioners for sticking on the monthly schedule. I like this cadence, and I think we're doing good work without big gaps in between our meetings. Thank you. Adjournment. This concludes the items on the agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
A second.
You guys are on it today. Thank you both very much. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. I don't see any opposed. This meeting is adjourned. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and ahuiho.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Aye. Aloha.
Aloha.
Good work, guys.